Council meeting of January 7th, 2019 to order with a moment of silent meditation. Salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First up is the introduction of the new DPW custodian, Eric Lamson. Bring it here.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce the newest Public Works employee, custodian Eric Lamson. He's been a resident of the town for about 10 years. Seems to be a real hard worker, and we're glad to have him. I hope he hangs around.
Really glad to be here.
Very nice to meet you.
Thanks, Eric. Thank you.
And I have to say, he keeps a great garden.
Thank you.
Move that we sit as a licensing board.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thanks. Campground license renewals. Open a hearing on the renewal of the following campground licenses. Frontier Camper Park LLC, Scott Thompson, 188 Maxon Hill Road, Ashaway, Rhode Island, license for 225 campsites and safari sites. Mr. Thompson?
No, I am
Okay.
representative.
Okay, thank you. Greenwood Hill Campground Association Incorporated, Jeffrey P. Aldridge, 13 Newbury Lane, Hope Valley, Rhode Island, license for 80 campsites and safari sites. Applicant or representative? Okay, sir. Holly Tree Campground Incorporated, Marie Patrizio, 109 Ashaway Road, Ashaway, Rhode Island, license for 158 campsites and safari sites. Applicant? Oh, there.
Present.
Okay. How you doing? Whispering Pines Campground, Cameron May, WP Management Group LLC, 41 Sawmill Road, Hope Valley, Rhode Island, license for 213 campsites and safari sites. Yes? Okay, yep. And last but not least, Ashaway RV Resort, Alan Haney, Resort Manager, Zerman Zeman Homes, 225 Ashaway Road, license for 260 campsites. There are no safari sites. Okay. Right. Okay. I know there was a couple small concerns, I think, on some of the information we got in our packet. Yeah, right. Right.
Are you going to discuss Ashway RV right away?
We'll go through them all again.
I didn't know which one you want, if you want to start now.
Yeah, we'll start with the, anybody
As
have any?
they're listed?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because Frontier Camper has some issues.
Right. And something to do with, having to be cleaned up, yeah. So by April 1, I think, where's Frontier?
Here,
Okay,
yes, we are aware.
okay. By April 1, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we can prove it subject to, yeah.
Okay, we make a motion to approve Frontier Camper Park campground licenses subject to all state and town regulations being met, no town taxes current prior to issue.
And one other addition.
And with the, I'm sorry, and for the debris being cleaned up by April 1st.
And what I wanted to add was, in this list, when it lists town regulations, from now on, I discussed it with Lisa, when we vote on this, it's also to add, right here in front of us, that they also must include the annual inventory by, what was the date? I'm trying to remember the date. That this, is it January 1st? They have to have it, Lisa? Is it January? December 31st? Yes. Oh, right. Yes, so it would be by...
And annual inventory given to the town by December 31st.
Thank you, yep. Second.
Okay, motion and second. Any further questions, folks? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next up is Greenwood
state and town regulations being met, and all town taxes current prior to issue, as well as the annual inventory, which is due by December 31st.
Second.
Okay, motion made second, any discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Holly Tree Campground.
And I make a motion to approve Holly Tree Campground's license renewal subject to all state and town regulations being met and all town taxes current prior to issue with the annual inventory due by December 31st.
Second.
Okay, motion made second, any discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Next, the Richmond Fund.
Whispering Pine Campground, a motion to approve the campground licenses for Whispering Pine Campground, subject to all state and town regulations being met and all town taxes current prior to issue, as well as the annual inventory, which is due by December 31st.
Second.
Okay, motion made second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, next up, Ashway RV Resort.
Did we not rush to a motion on this one?
No. What's your name, sir?
I'm Alan Haney.
Oh, you're Alan, okay.
Yes,
Okay,
here's
great.
my beard.
Yeah, please. So we got a letter, Alan, on the clerk's office on December 3rd. And I just want to read it. I'm not sure if you got a copy of it.
Not the letter itself, no.
Oh, okay. All right. It said, we write to you as the licensing board for the town to bring to your attention a problem that has been occurring for a couple of years since Ashway Pines RV Park was granted approval. As part of the approval, Bono Place was to be upgraded as it is the access road to the campground. Upon completion of the road upgrade, Ashway Pines RV Park is required to maintain the road. Part of the upgrade included installation of critter crossings, request to have the owners of the campground clear the critter crossings have either not been met or met with disdain or refusal. For the past couple of years, this wetland has been backing up and impacting properties on Hindle Drive, causing flooding. This year has been especially problematic with the additional rainstorms we've had this fall. The water has now entered the basement of one of the homes, and we fear that our wells will be negatively impacted. We respectfully request the town council please assist with the residents with the problems we are facing and compel the campground to employ measures to ensure compliance with their maintenance obligations for the road. So, it's a road flooding issue, so, Mr. Haney, I guess how do you plan to handle that?
I guess the statement I have, wasn't really aware of the implementation of the critter crossing, but what we've been made aware of, on November 9th, Zeman Homes acquired Ashway RV Resort. On that day was when I started as resort manager. The day of closing, I was made aware of the pre-existing problem relating to beaver activity damming up the existing culvert, so an environmentally protected pond that was discussed that flows beneath Verona runs through the culverts. The pond itself is now owned by Ashway RV Resort. Over an existing home site that shares there is an existing home site that shares the roadway to access their property. The road has 3 primary culverts to ensure proper water flow and 2 overflow culverts to ensure water level that does not rise beyond normal levels. Zeman Homes and myself as manager immediately made that our first priority. Within 3 days, the water levels rose above the roadway and began to flow over the road, a situation that would not have been possible to predict or resolve safely in that time frame. The month November had significant amounts of precipitation and weather, snowstorm, which proved challenging. One of the previous owners of Ashway RV indicated to me that the water had not previously covered the road. Our primary concerns with the water level on neighboring properties, losing the roads, and our potential for the water to freeze, making it inaccessible. Knowing the urgency, I immediately reached out to 4 local contractors who might have the equipment and knowledge to clear the clogged culverts, and after that contact, I realized I could not help in the short time frame. I did reach out to another contractor who has done previously this type of work, and he was able to clear the situation up on December 7, 2018. So to my knowledge, the upstream side of the road and the downstream side are now currently level, and we have cleared the problem. Zeman Homes and myself are committed to creating a solution to this and preventing it from going forward. The existence of working with the DEM to install, I guess what they call like either beaver cones or a welded apparatus to prevent the situation of clogged culverts from going forward.
Okay. When did your company buy it?
November 9th, 2018.
And what's the name of your group?
Zeman Homes
How do you
Incorporated,
spell that?
ZEMAN.
I was going to suggest that we not approve this tonight, but refer it to the solicitor. And he is the solicitor of the planning board, and he could look at, or just the solicitor, at least look at the requirements of the planning board's previous decisions on this, I would think, master plan. But I think we just need to refer it to the solicitor, and he can direct it. And then when the solicitor is satisfied that you've met these concerns and satisfied completely, the solicitor would let us know. So that's what I'm suggesting.
I think it's a good idea, except the solicitor will work through the planning board, because I remember when this was done, and they did put critter pathways. My understanding is this is critters which have a tendency to return, and they are incorrigible.
Yes.
Yes. So I think probably giving it to the solicitor, but going through the planning board, trying to solve the problem in that manner, and then approving it when you have been able to solve it. And obviously you just bought it, so you're doing the best you can in that first month to try to accomplish that as quickly as you could. So I assume that that would work well with the planning board.
Again, said as soon as we're able, we're going to install the metal apparatuses that would prevent the future clogging activity of the,
Right, because they had critter crossings already. The problem is the critter crosses and builds a dam.
Yes.
They're competent, they're extraordinary.
And like I said, Zeman Homes and I as manager are completely dedicated to doing whatever it takes to resolve the situation.
Thank you.
I'll move that we deny at this time a renewal license to Ashley RV Resort, and it's just at this time, and refer it to the solicitor.
Which are the
And of course, he's the solicitor of the planning board.
What kind of impact of denying that does that have?
It's
Can you
just,
still operate?
no, they don't operate at this time, you're right.
Okay, you have to be closed 2 months of the year.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Point of order. We have further discussion on this topic.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Andrea Cancera, and I represent the Cancera family. And we do own the land on the east side of the middle place. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I've just been realizing that the land had been transferred to Zeman, which is a very large, apparently, campground, RV, and mobile home developer with several communities around the country.
40, yes.
So they're not local, they're their local representatives, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
So if we have issues, we and the town contact you?
Correct, yes.
So there's a long history to the campground and our family's opposition to some of it, which I won't go into now. But over the course of time, there have been many stipulations made by the planning board and the zoning board for the development and final approval of the campground. And quite a few of these refer to the ability to monitor wetlands and possible negative impact on the wetlands. They refer to monitoring of the wells. They refer to monitoring of water runoff from the campground into the wetlands. And I would like all of these to be reviewed as part of this. And Sylvia, what you were saying about having the planning board, and I think also the zoning board specs taken a look at and see what they call for would be a very good idea. You too have been watching the water level rise. I don't know if you accept it digitally, but I have pictures that I've been taking over the past year at about after 4 or 5 different heavy rain periods, and you can see how the water keeps rising. which can be detrimental to the wetlands itself. And I have no idea what kind of runoff is running into the wetlands. I don't think this is just a beaver problem. I think this is also a runoff problem. And I would like to have the design of the campground looked at and see what's going on there and what they might have also done to try to prevent such runoff. We operate a farm nearby. We have concerns over drawdown by your wells, especially since we've had such dry summers recently. And our land has been, much of our land, including the wetlands, we sold development rights to that land to the state so that DEM basically is involved in stewardship of our land as well. So whatever can be done to review and inspect and should be done to review and inspect, we do support and we ask that we do that.
Thanks, Ms. Panzera.
Thank you.
Do you think either maybe it's not the highway department, but the zoning?
We'll figure it out, okay.
Yeah, it's also a little
So this is what we'll fix that up.
So I think you need a motion, was that second?
Yes.
Any other discussion on this applicant? Yes, sir. Come to the podium.
I'm Randy Harrison, and I own property on Handle Drive, which abuts the marsh we're speaking of. I've been watching this marsh situation with the campground for about 7 years. My dad owned the property, he passed away when I took the property over. It was definitely a flooding problem. And the flooding problem is more from the lack of taking care of the culverts, as Alan had mentioned. These people, we took over in November. Yeah. And I want to give a plug to them, because when they took it over, they went in there, cleaned it out. Alan had somebody do it. And the water now is running beautiful. I don't know if Andrea, have you noticed any different? No. Have you noticed the water level has dropped?
I can say that it's dropped a little bit since one time where it was recently spread over the runway, which actually is not the only time that has happened.
Yeah.
It also happened in the big floods in April 2010, if not another time beyond that.
The way it stands right now, when Zeman bought this, they had someone come in, and I'm not sure if it's a state or whether it was Zeman, and trap the beavers. That was the major problem. I mean, I've watched this thing for years. It's pretty obvious. These beavers are unreal. Somebody went in there, and I talked to him. It was a state trapper, and he got a number of beavers out there. And then Zeman went in, cleaned it out. Right now, there's no problem. No. If it maintains this way, we have no problem. I don't think any of the residents do. I can't speak for Sarah's. They're in a different situation. But I can tell you right now, if it remains the way it is, I don't see any problems going forward.
Thanks.
So they are doing their job. More than I can say from previous owners. That was the problem. So kudos to you guys. Thank you.
What's your name?
My name is Randy Harrison.
Thanks, Bob. Anyone else on the RV? Yes, sir. Yeah, I haven't seen you in a while. Yeah, how you doing? Happy New Year. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Campaign Sarah, 90 Sarah Lane, in regards to the Ashley RV Resort. I wrote down a couple of things I just want to talk about. Hopefully they can make some progress with it. That may or may not have significance, but maybe somebody will be able to help me with Since the opening of the RV park, the fresh air becomes densely filled with the smell of smoke around 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. from spring to fall. I ask, can the source of the smoke-filled air be resolved? Because I have no idea how I could possibly go about addressing something like this. I mean, I have any capability of doing it on my own. I have no idea where to start for something like this in order to have somebody along with me see the air and know what it's like, and somebody that can have more knowledge on something that can be done if it and indeed is foreseen to be a problem, and that person would be able to help me with the problem. So as a start for something like that, I just don't know where I can start getting assistance and somebody that might feel the same way about it and that can help me with the matter. So if anybody can recommend something or who to talk to about the matter, I appreciate that. Now, I guess I'd like to talk about the amount, the rain that we've been having, and from my standpoint, I guess to call it a standpoint, but I do have a concern because we do have a lot of freshwater streams in our area, and being somebody born on the farm surrounding the RV park, I have a general idea of what things used to be like as compared to nowadays. And I have noticed given the amount of rain that we've been getting recently, my concerns have grown due to the amount of water flowing through areas in the woods I haven't seen before. And I think we're all could agree that we've been having a lot of rain that we haven't had in the past, and matters could actually get worse than they are, according to some people in their opinions voicing the matter. And I don't know if the impacts now are because are detrimental in any way because of the rain. Just from my observation, I noticed a little bit of water, a little more excess water flowing through the woods than ever used to be, and so I don't know if this would make a difference with the beaver analysis being a problem, off the rainwater being an addition to the beaver analysis as a problem. This could be a combined thing. Maybe the beaver should be not singled out as much because of the amount of rain. So also I'd like to ask about the retention ponds, and they are functioning as designed, and if there is the surface water flowing off the site, or is it all being contained, and things like that as well. Would that have a significance, on abutting properties and how they feel about, things with water flows, and, if there's any impacts from, the rising waters and, all these things combined. Can stormwater be retained in the future, as well? How can this be determined? My points I'm trying to make about, what can we do about things like this? Who can we talk to? Can these matters be resolved, and how to go about things like this? It's all very complicated matters. I mean, this might come to a point where people need help with these matters, and these matters should be addressed, where to start and what to do. So, we don't want any big problems and somebody having hardships because of certain things that could become apparent that aren't so much apparent at this time. So, also, for the past 3 years, the well on our farm has run low on water in August and September, requiring time to regenerate. This has never happened before, so, you know, how can it be determined if our well is being impacted at all by the neighboring RV park water system? I would have to ask if the water, is the water storage tank for the well there, according to the design, and how many wells are being used? So, again, how can it be determined if our well is being impacted at all by the neighboring RV park water system? These are all complicated things here that I see, I've got these legitimate concerns. And I just don't know if they're going to get worse. I mean, as they already are, and what to do about it. It's all very complicated. Where do you go to get assistance with this, and who's can address this, and who can come up with a resolve? I don't know if anybody knows where to start on matters like this or what can be done. So I appreciate anybody who can offer some type of assistance, and anybody's opinion on my matters that I brought up with the air, the high, the possible effects from any water that could be possibly coming onto our property. I don't know, how can I determine things like that?
You can. As you heard, we are referring this to the solicitor, and that's where it belongs.
Yeah.
And he will look at what's required,
Yep.
what's occurring, and you're right, it is complicated, or it could be. So we have the new owner, we have the solicitor who's going to be on it, and for the moment, you doing what you're doing right now is exactly what the council and everyone needs to hear. They need to know if you have concerns and what they are, and you've just done that. So that's very helpful.
Oh, good.
So we'll check it out, Ken, and we'll have zoning check it, the solicitor, we'll figure it out.
All right.
We didn't approve it tonight because we had concerns and you had concerns, so we'll make sure that they conform to what they're supposed to do, and we'll get back to you.
All right.
All right,
Thank
sir?
you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn the license.
Oh, sorry, another person needs to speak.
Motion to adjourn the license.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Okay, number 2, PSES ordinance amendment. Continue the hearing on proposed amendments to chapter 246, non-residential photovoltaic solar energy systems. Code of ordinances, chapter 134, appendix A, entitled zoning. Introduced and sponsored by council, developing from the California and Thompson. The proposed amendments are advertised in our strike language. Jim, you want to come up and just preface our meeting here? And we were very quick to incorporate all of our changes from the Hope Valley Elementary School meeting. Thank you. And I guess we'll go through this amended ordinance in its current state and see how the council can move forward. So, do you have any further comments on
Well, I just want to stress one point that back in 2014, the council made a pretty strong statement where PSESs were allowed in commercial and manufacturing zones. And then, back in July of 2016, the council opened that up to farms, the farm liability ordinance, where it resides today. And the same night you opened it up to farms, you passed the original ordinance that we have that we're amending tonight, it's 246. So I just want to point out that the original intent of this ordinance was to regulate those types of systems that the council allowed by right. So since that time, the solar issue has moved in a forward direction, and we've had an abundance of requests that have come forth to the council to change zones and change comprehensive plans to either commercial or manufacturing properties. So when that change is made, then this ordinance kicks in and regulates those as well. So I just want to point out again, the primary purpose of this ordinance was to regulate those in first initial projects. And it didn't foresee the onslaught of applications. But I think the council really has handled things brilliantly, and really in the only way that it could have handled them. When these requests come in from parties to change zones, council has to entertain them. They can't just throw them in the wastebasket. So you appropriately review them, each and every one of them, on the merits of each one, and you make your decisions accordingly. One you rejected, a couple you approved, and I think that was the only way you can really go about it. So I think the council's done a great job, and I think the public here really deserves to compliment the council on how you've handled these things to be. But in the course of reviewing these projects, the planning board has felt that the initial ordinance that was passed was not really adequate. We learned a lot. The planning board learned a lot in going through these things. So they felt that additional amendments were necessary. And we've had a few public hearings now, and we're at the point where we can review what we talked about in December. That's good. So,
All right, sounds good, Jim. Stand by in case if you have any questions. Okay. All right, so we're gonna start, folks, with the amended version of the PSCS ordinance. It's in our package. Starting again with the first paragraph, page 1 definition. And going through numbers 1 through 3. Yes, Lisa?
Are you going to be going through the addendum that Mr. Lampier went through versus the ordinance itself?
Correct.
We're side by side.
We're doing the correction.
There was
Well,
some
I'm gonna start with the one
non-delegate-
that's labeled December 17th. That's the last meeting we had.
Yep.
The addendum.
Correct. Correct. Yep. So we're gonna go through that page by page. We'll start with, again, page 1, with the heading of photovoltaic solar energy systems. I think Sharon made a correction in that first paragraph, or somebody did, PSCS. Any questions on that paragraph, first paragraph? Okay. What about number 1 on page 1? Number 2, electric connections. Okay, number 3. Okay,
On page 3, number 3, the very last sentence, Jim, where you say, I'll read it to the public, I don't have it. Prevent unauthorized access to ground level facilities shall be enclosed by a perimeter fence of no less than 6 feet high of a style to be determined by the planning board and elevated 6 inches above ground level to allow for the passage of small animals. It's the next sentence I have a change on, if you take a look at. Alternatively, instead of alternatively, can we say in addition, comma, where acceptable to the applicant and public utility, the planning board may approve of a vegetative buffer to be used to prevent unauthorized access and to further obstruct the view of the solar panels and equipment.
And on that,
The purpose is that the fence is not necessarily enough to buffer it behind and in front, both sides of the fence.
so what I was going to suggest, and what you read is fine, what I was going to suggest is where it says where acceptable to the applicant and the public utility,
Which
national,
yes.
Okay, go ahead.
we don't need, it's not where acceptable to the applicant or acceptable to the public utility. It's whether or not the planning board is allowed, it has the flexibility to approve of a vegetative buffer. So it's, so,
And just cut that.
Yes.
Take out where acceptable to the applicant and public utility.
yes, maybe you could reread your sentence.
In addition, the planning board may approve of the vegetative buffer to be used to prevent unauthorized access and to further obstruct the view of the solar panels and equipment. I'm fine with you too.
Next page. Yes.
In addition to the fence or in lieu?
In addition. Yeah, because what they'll do is they've been doing it in the planning board, they've been doing the fence, but they're buffering before it and after it. And they've chosen to make the buffering in a grade gated manner, so they can block. The last one, they made me go from a chain link to a privacy fence, so it's up to the planning board to make that decision.
Question, Bill?
Would it be more clear to specifically state
Yeah.
in addition to the
That's
fence?
what she said, that's what I said. But I said in addition.
Okay, thank you.
In addition.
Okay, Wayne? It starts at the second page, actually, it's page 3, number 9. I guess there were a lot of changes to that. The one question I had myself was the 500 feet of right notification. I emailed the solicitor on whether that was okay to do. And I believe it's state statute, Kevin, that governs the 200-foot abutter notification.
Yes, the statute specifically is Rhode Island General Laws 45-24-53 C2, which sets forth the 200 foot notice requirement to neighbors of any parcel that is subject to the zoning petition. That's the state law requirement.
But if this is no longer a petition, but it is actually when the proposed PSES is in use, couldn't we notify all the adjacent residents within 500 feet so that they're warned about the construction noise? I think that's after, not during. I mean, we haven't changed the 200-foot abutter notice that the state determined for the zoning application, but once this is zoned, this is after the fact. I would like to leave the 500 feet and see where it goes, because I think that's reasonable when you have a lot of noise and a lot of activity, that especially in a rural area, because people have animals and chickens and horses and dogs and things that can get very upset about noise, not to mention children and babies. So I'd like to leave that 500 because it's after the fact, not before the fact.
Kevin, does that make any sense?
Well, I mean, a council certainly can do that. Just the thought that comes to my mind is this, that's a potentially very expensive process, particularly if it's a more densely populated area. That 500, that could be a lot of people. And so then the question comes up, you'd have to put some language in there. If you're going to do that, the applicant would have to bear the cost to do it.
I say leave it at 200, because that's what state law requires.
I would actually agree with Barbara. The more people who know, the better.
Yeah, but state law's 200.
But that's, if you're going beyond the, if you're doing more than what the state law requires, aren't you?
Well, there's a reason it's there, so,
Well, the statute I referred to is notice of a hearing for the zone change in particular. This, as I read, as I listen to what's being said, this doesn't refer to that. This refers to if there's going to be a construction operation for more than 6 months, then the proposal, as I understand it, would be for the town to send notices to people within 500 feet of the construction activity and the things that are described here. I mean, certainly the council can do that. That would not conflict with the state notice requirement regarding the public hearing. But again, my only immediate thought to that is that probably some consideration, if the council's going to do that, ought to be put into who's going to pay for the extra notice.
And in that case, the any and all concerns by those receiving the formal notice shall be resolved. It says in a public hearing, but I think it should be in a planning board public hearing format to ensure all concerns, health, safety, and well-being of residents are addressed to their satisfaction prior to the start of any construction. So I would add the planning board before public hearing, so you know where it's going.
And also, in this paragraph, after the 500 feet shall be given in the form of that, where it goes on, and it's asking the developer or the applicant or the owner to formally write for this notification that's going to go out to 500 people, that the applicant or owner or developer has to list all the negatives and all the disturbances, and that's backwards. Are we going to, how can, you think that through?
500 feet.
No, but forget the 500 feet. What I'm talking about is the next part where it says it requires formal written notification of the possible disruptions, disturbances, as well as potential hazards that could occur to their home, property, and animals as a result of said construction to install industrial-sized solar arrays.
Cut it.
Where are we asking, think about it.
No, I am,
Yeah, okay.
and it's a good point. You just stop
Right.
within 500 feet, period. And then don't put anything in there. They are notifying, and then it would be at a public hearing, and at the public hearing, they can address the concerns. Because you can't do every kind of thing that's possibly disruptive. It's not possible, because it's impossible, it's irrational. So just stop as residents within 500 feet. I think they should know within 500 feet, but kill the entire sentence after that until you get to any and all concerns. Because you can't, you don't know everything, and someone's going to say, well, you didn't do what I said.
Or they
You
can
didn't do
say,
my rabbit."
everything's wonderful, there are no negatives. I
Or
mean,
you didn't handle my rabbit, or I love the beavers, I'm sorry, you can't handle all that. So,
And stop after the 1 feet.
yeah, just do within 500 feet, period, and then take out the next sentence, the rest of that sentence, and go to any and all concerns by those, any concerns that you have should be addressed. If, are addressed to their satisfaction prior to construction and reconstruction.
Okay, that's,
I don't know if
that's
that's
okay.
Do you want to say,
Everybody okay with that?
wait a minute, do you want to say are addressed to their
Right.
satisfaction or just are addressed? Because someone may not be satisfied with anything. And the planning board may feel that it is acceptable.
So before we go to that last sentence, as Bill has pointed out, we need to, if it's going to end within 500 feet, just make sure that's a sentence that makes sense. If a utility scale industrial power plant, I mean, when did we start calling these things, the council or the town, utility scale industrial power plants? They're solar farms. So, or solar arrays, they're not referred, so
Okay,
you might want to think about that.
we want to change that to solar array.
Yeah, if a solar array project is
Yes, it is.
yeah, the sentence is messy, but we can clean that up. As long as we agree that it ends at 500 feet, we just need to work on that sentence to make it a useful sentence.
So make it, if it's a PSDS, is to require 6 or more months of construction.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, PSDS.
Yeah, there you
Is to
go.
require 6 or more months of construction. Then notification of all the public residents within 500 feet shall be given.
Shall be given. Yeah,
So the periods after shall be given.
that's, yeah, that works.
Can we add in there that the additional 300 feet notification be paid, that the cost will be borne by the applicant?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, I would agree to that.
The additional
300 feet notification should be borne by the applicant. I think they've done that.
So you're going with 500 to 300.
He's doing the additional.
Stupid enough to say that he's not going to.
Yeah, is that something that you do, that you come up? No, the applicant is not on your clerk's
I
office.
don't know where that came, I just want to know.
Right,
That
right.
is daunting.
Right.
It is. It could be hundreds.
Yeah, but
It's
it's,
starting for 200. they
okay, let me get these facts straight.
I would think it would be the obligation of the developer.
Mhm.
Are we going with 500 feet or 300? 300 feet for notification, but with...
No, he was just talking about
The
the,
additional over and above.
they already pay for the 200 foot, anyone, they do. So we might as well say, yes, they have to pay for it all. It's one by the applicant.
I would think they have to prepare that. I don't have the ability to do that.
Right,
That is not my
Right,
work.
that's right.
That should be the obligation of the developer.
We're going with 500 and not 300?
Correct.
No, it's 300 additional, we're staying at 500. So the sentence is, the notification of all abutters and residents within 500 feet shall be given, period. The additional 300 foot will also be,
Well, the entire 500 feet, all notices,
Warned by the applicant.
warned by the applicant.
And then put some level of protection in what Lisa's talking about with the notification.
Prepared.
Prepared.
Prepared and paid for by the applicant.
Yeah.
Can we add that somewhere?
Yes. Prepared
By
and
the applicant.
warned by the applicant.
we need to also get rid of their satisfaction. In a, shall be resolved in a public, in a planning board public hearing format to ensure all concerns, safety, health, and well-being of residents as stated in the comprehensive plan are addressed prior to the start of any construction.
On that sentence, any concerns by those receiving the formal notice shall be resolved in a public hearing. We don't know if they'll be resolved,
That's correct.
so I think, if you're gonna have this sentence, the formal notice, is to tell them what it is and where, that we're gonna have a public hearing. So, I think the sentence says a whole lot more than it really needs
Any
to.
and all concerns by this receiving the formal notice
Shall be addressed by the planning
shall
board.
be addressed. Yes.
I have a problem with that public hearing.
Yes, yeah.
So what are you putting in?
Public hearing.
Public hearing?
Any and all concerns by those receiving the formal notice shall be addressed by the
Addressed.
planning board.
By the planning
Addressed.
board,
There
okay.
you go.
To ensure.
To ensure all concerns, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Address.
Okay.
Any other
That's
comments?
good.
You got all that
How
stuff?
about, yeah, how about the tail end of that sentence,
Yes, I have a
the
question.
satisfaction?
We, prior to we solved the last part, unless we're adding the additional 500 feet, will also, will be,
After comprehensive plan, you put a period. And just end it. You don't have to say are addressed to be satisfaction prior to starting any construction. You can just end it. Is that okay?
Okay.
All right.
the obligation of the developer.
Fine.
Notification period. Notification.
Cost of the notice will be prepared and known by the applicant.
Did you hear that, Jim? Okay, good.
All right, so
You can do it.
I think we've got all the questions, concerns on that section, number 9.
Do you still want to add the prior to the start of any construction? Do you still need that? That last 6 words?
No, that, right at, a period can be after comprehensive
Plan,
plan,
okay.
and then the rest of the sentence stricken.
Okay, anything on number 12?
No.
What about number 13? This is the big one.
Yeah, I've got something I wanted to pass out so you can actually look at it as we talk about it. We could pass this same thing as that, yeah. If anybody's interested in this particular section, I wrote something up, and I've got some copies here. This particular section, you know it needs work, so try a stab at it.
Right, I guess on number 13 seems to be the biggest area of questions or concerns.
Yeah, and it's like a report. It's a very difficult post. But what I suggested was that instead of doing, the first sentence is fine, and then it says if the parcel is zoned RFR 80, I suggested we strike, and the applicant is seeking to rezone the parcel no more than 30% of the parcel subject to it. I just was striking that and adding that. And before we even get to it, we heard in the last hearing that maybe these landowners should do something similar to what is allowed in with the farms, in the farm viability ordinance. But in trying to make it look like that, I had, okay, what about 15 acres? Well, at 15 acres, the farm viability ordinance, they can put in up to 2 acres of solar for the farmers. And if they have more than a 50-acre farm, they get to put up 3. So I don't think, if we did exactly the same thing, the farmers would be like, well, gee, I could do this other thing, and we don't want to discourage farming. We did the farm viability to encourage farming. So all I did was look at that and think about it for a long time. I'm sure we all have. But what I was thinking of doing is whether or not we should allow anyone who's in RFR 80 and they have more than 50 acres, that they're allowed by right to put up 3 acres of this solar. And that as part of this, we could add a sentence that says something to this effect. Any request for a zone change for RFR 80 land to allow a solar farm on less than 50 acres will be denied. Any request for a zoning change for RFR 80 land in excess of 50 acres will be denied, and instead, the applicant will be required to adhere to this ordinance in its entirety. And of course, that would be 3 acres. So, that's just a starting point. I didn't know how you all felt about that.
I don't think that gives us the opportunity for landfills, which are RFR 80, to be covered.
The planning board has flexibility in this ordinance to go up or down. So if it was a landfill and they said, oh, this is different, the planning board does have the flexibility to...
We're talking about the council.
Right, so the planning board has the flexibility.
I'd like to narrow it down a little bit. It's a start, certainly. But again, I want to point out the fact that this whole ordinance was created, again, by the by right properties, which are commercial manufacturing. None of those, I think, projects are really the ones that are the issue. And I think the planning board and the town essentially approved, I think, 12 to date. So I just want to, I had gotten this information from Jim today. So the council has approved 4 zone changes, right? The 2 gravel banks and 2 residential. There were 6 projects that were zoned commercial and manufacturing. Palmer Circle, that was 5 acres. Hopkinton Industrial Park, 5 acres. Hopkinton Industrial Park Phase 2, 11 acres. 916 Main Street, Enchanted Forest, 1 acre. Alton Bradford Road was 6 acres. Main Street was 1 acre. And then there was all the farm viability ordinance, there were 6 of those that were approved, and those are all 1 acre. So I guess my point is that the by right properties, which again this ordinance was created for initially, for guidance for the planning board, there were 6 approved, and there was only 1, actually 2 out of the 6 that had 3 acres or less. The rest were greater than that. So whatever amendments we make is going to greatly affect the ones that are by right, not RFR 80. I'm not talking about RFR 80, I'm talking about by right properties, as the planner had suggested. Those are allowed by right and do not need council approval. So we have to think about this because it'll have great impacts to the ones that are allowed by right. And I'm not talking about RFR 80, that's a totally different animal. So we have to come up with something that's going to agree with what's already been done to some extent and plan for the future on the by right as well as the RFR 80. So I'm not sure what the answer is, but we have to try and figure it out. So that's my spiel on that. So anyway, I know we've all kind of bounced back from, the current percentage is 30. That was brought out by the planning board taking the zoning requirements of 15% and doubling it. I personally would go back to the 15%, but I think I was the only person that was at that high level. But that's me. I'm going with zoning, what's required by zoning, that's 15%. So if we want to find some kind of a percentage, I guess, that everybody can deal with, and it doesn't affect the by right properties, which are commercial manufacturing, that's what we need to do.
I think if you look at this, at the words here, commercial and manufacturing zones, zone parcels can have more than 3 acres. That's in the top part right here.
Well, I haven't read it yet, so.
Well, this is only, her sentence and her suggestion is only talking about RFR.
But this ordinance, once it's amended, it's going to have implications for all of them.
Right, and I have to
So
say,
you can't just say one and have one be okay with it and the other one's not.
But it's clear that commercial and manufacturing can do it by right. It's clear, and it's in this ordinance and it's elsewhere, that, and in the district use table, they can do it. The district use table actually says that they can do this, so we're not saying they can't. What I hope we're gonna say is we don't want large-scale solar farms on large, we don't want them anymore. So we've got, and if that's how we're gonna go, we need to tighten this up, and that's why this last sentence I have at the bottom, you can put in things, and I mean, the solicitor could comment on this, he might have he's had suggestions on some different wording, but do you agree with this sentence that we don't want, we're gonna tell them, if we can agree on a certain amount of acreage, that people that have large tracts of land can do a certain amount by right, 3 acres or 2 acres, and we can put in here that, this last sentence.
Are you talking about adding an RFR 80 by the way? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, yeah. Only on acreage that is substantial, and that could be 50 or more. And it's 50 or more in the farm viability ordinance.
I think I would rather not have RFR 80 have anything by right, other than farms that are official farms, because that was the farm viability. Because there are large tracts of land that have been gravel banks that are on RFR 80, that you will now prevent them from, they're not commercial, they are RFR 80 gravel banks. You will prevent them from covering the gravel bank with solar, which would be a fine thing. I would not like to have something that draconian. I just don't think it's possible. I think people fight it, they can fight it in the courts too. But I think it's too much to make a draconian statement like that. I think we need not to, we should make it a special use. We should have it go through, well, preferably not council, the planning board. Because there are times RFR 80 land, which is a farm, is going to want to do 15 acres because it is a gravel bank, has been a gravel bank, and it needs to be covered, which is okay. But I think it gives the planning board the opportunity to make those decisions by saying no one may have more than 3 acres, even if you have over 50 acres of farmland. I don't think that's appropriate. I am not agreeing to that.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Just because Councilor Thompson sort of invited my input on this new language at the bottom of the handout. Because I'm just seeing it for the first time. First of all, I agree with what Councilor Caldwell just said. But the point I wanted to make in addition to that is the nature of zoning changes. So changing an RFR 80 to allow, in a particular case, a solar farm. That's a legislative process that is non-delegable to the planning board. So only the council can change a zone for a particular parcel of land. And as we've heard 100 times from, I think everybody agrees, the legal standard for council to change a zone for a particular parcel of land is whether such a change would be consistent with the comprehensive plan. That's the criteria that has to be applied. And I would suggest that to say, as is stated in this new language at the bottom of the page of the handout, any request for a zone change for RFR 80 land to allow a solar farm on any, it says less than 50 acres will be denied. That kind of rings a lot of alarms in my head that that's probably unconstitutional, for starters. The very fact that a landowner has a right to apply for a zoning change implies they have a right to have it considered under the appropriate legal standard, which, as I said, is, as everyone agrees, is whether it's the change will be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So I guess you're getting the idea I don't like this language,
Okay.
particularly just because I think it's unconstitutional. I haven't spent a lot of time examining it, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. So anyway, that's just a
I could just weigh in, I agree with the solicitor in his opinion here. However, I want to suggest that probably a better way to achieve Sylvia's goal here would be to take the original ordinance that was adopted by the council that allowed them in commercial and manufacturing zones and put a P, permitted, in the RFR 80 zone column there, and then add another condition. You put 5 conditions that these things had to meet. So you could add a 6th and say that minimum lot size for an RFR 80 parcel would be 50 acres to do 3 acres. There's another way to accomplish what you want to do other than the language.
At the moment,
If they want to-
we already have 3 acres for 50.
For farmers.
That's
For farmers.
She's talking about our.
I know, but I think that it should stay with farmers.
The language that Sylvia put forth is, will not affect the by right properties, the commercial and manufacturing. They can still cover 75% of their property. It does not affect the farm viability ordinance. What Sylvia is attempting to do is put something in place that would allow some parcels of a certain size in RFR 80 to accommodate as much as a 3-acre solar farm. That's what she's attempting to do. Okay, so there's a way to do it if that's what the council wants to do.
But see, I don't want to because I know farms that have more already are gravel banks that are bigger than 3 acres. And they're on farms, they're on RFR 80.
Right, but in the ordinance now, again, we can ask our solicitor to see if this is legal or not, but in the ordinance right now, it says that the planning board has the right to adjust the coverage on these things. That would be up or down. So I'm sure that when the planning board is confronted with a gravel bank situation, they would allow more than 3 acres. I'm confident of that, if you want to delegate that power to the planning board.
Or if the owner of the property feels that the planning board has said no, they'll take RFR 80 and say, I want it changed to commercial and I want to do the whole thing in solar. And they'll bring it to the council.
Well, that's very simple. All the council has to do is say no.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, you can say no to all these projects and then the problem goes
And
away.
eventually
They're
they'll
very
get.
nice, except that it depends on who's on the council.
Correct. Well, that's where well, at the end of the day, I suppose the council could even come up with, when presented with an individual case, the council could come up with a particular ordinance pertaining to a project that trumps what you're trying to put in place today. So at the end of the day, the public has to have faith in the council that it will reach a good decision in the best interest of the town. I think the council's been going that direction right now. You've seen that, you haven't approved every one. And again, it's part of this process that the council goes through, not just looking at the comprehensive plan, determining if these cases are consistent with that, but you're listening to the public. The public has been coming out in greater numbers as time goes on, weighing in on this. And what I see happening here is sort of a equilibrium forming. So again, and I even see the council attempting, Sylvia herself is attempting to limit these things to some degree. So I think the council is attempting to moderate this. You have to have faith in the council. You have no choice but to have faith in the council.
Oh, but meanwhile, until we get a chance to say no, and which takes time to get that far, okay? Meanwhile, we have this in front of us, and I do think if you have a landowner and they have land, why did we help the farmers? Because we want to help them preserve their land, and they're farming, and we love it. We should also try to find a way, or could find a way, to help large landowners. They're not farming, maybe they'll get into farming, but allow them to use a small part of their property, like the farmers, and they have a little additional income, and maybe when it gets inherited by others, their family or whatever, they'll say, well, we've got this little bit of income in, we can pay our taxes comfortably now, we don't have to sell our land, we don't have to subdivide it to, because we need money. That's where I'm coming from. So, yeah, as you mentioned, the public knows, they know, they've told us what they want, it's very consistent, there are very few who we understand want to break on their taxes. You can understand that, okay, we've approved some projects, now the time has come, if we're ready to close the door, or just leave it open a little bit. This ordinance could leave it open a little bit, so that they have a little bit, and they don't have to, and our intention is then they don't have to ask for a zone change. That's one route to go. Or you just say, if they do request a zone change, they have to adhere to this ordinance in its entirety. But applications can still come in, as we know 5 more have come in, and they won't have to adhere to any amendments we make, because we haven't done it yet. So we got 5 more, and whenever we get around to it and we have a meeting, we can continue to say no if that's what we want to do for these projects. But do we want to allow, I guess that's the issue, do we want to treat the landowners in a similar way we did the farmers, but not entirely? We allow them a certain amount, but not 15 acres. It's got to be a larger piece. That's, so I don't know what more to say. Yeah.
The whole point is the real question is, does any of these agree with the comprehensive plan? And if the comprehensive plan at this point says no residential, no solar in residential RFR 80, maybe that's the bottom line. Would you say no?
It takes time.
Don't
We'd
put
have
it in there at all. Say no.
But currently, the comprehensive plan allows it in residential zones.
It does.
So RFR 80.
In one residential zone.
Not residential.
RFR 80.
What RFR? Well, that's the same
That's
thing.
rural
No, it's
farming.
not. No, it's not. R1 is different. It's residential only. RFR 80 is residential farm forest.
Okay, well, we're talking about RFR,
So that's
because
what we
most of
need.
us have that kind of thing. So, if the comprehensive plan really says no,
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. That's the
I thought
problem.
it does say no.
Well,
It's
that's
not-
where it says yes.
Right, there's sections that have it.
There's a section that says yes.
It's an arbitrary document, you can read it and
You
say
can-
no, and I can read it and say yes, so, but aside from the comment.
Well, the
yeah,
land use map is not arbitrary. The land use map says you can have it in the red and the purple areas only, and that's it. So that's it. And I think maybe, although the planning department, planning board was trying to, they added that 30%, that wasn't the original.
Well, I think that was.
They added that along the way. okay?
It was just something you threw against the wall. So
Right,
let's throw something
So
else.
let's take it away and
Let's-
just not have any.
Then, if we're not gonna change anything, and we're not gonna put in here that if you have land of a certain size, you can do so much. If you don't wanna do that at all, we need to hear that from at least 3 people.
I understand.
So then we'll know how to proceed tonight to get this thing done. So are there 3 people who wanna kick it out entirely?
Can I say something?
I hope so.
I've always been a big mouth, but this is the deal. Scott Bill Hurst. I'm against big solar in the town of Hopkinton, period. My understanding is, and I believe that we should work with taxpayers and the people who pay the property taxes, the ones that take the brunt. And usually it's the large property owners that are paying them the higher taxes. I think we should work with farmers to promote agriculture, but if somebody has large pieces of land, which is usually in an R80 zone, we should work with those people so we don't have all these super big solar. If it's legally sound and it's workable, I say give them a small but little parcel of solar. But I'm against big solar, massive solar. And I think it's important to work with taxpayers, but at the same time, I'm concerned about the assault on the town of Hopkinton by all this big solar that's going on. And so let's work with people. So that's I'm willing to work with other councilors to achieve that goal.
So, do we have any consensus on establishing an RFRA amount of acres
By right.
by right? I think it's a slippery slope myself.
Okay, so where's everybody sitting? So I think we should do a little something.
Yeah, by right.
By right.
What is your little circumference?
Well,
It
it could be 3 acres on 50 acres or more, like the farmers, or you could say 2 acres are allowed on 50 acres or more. And that's not as good as the farmers, but it's something. So,
What were you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking we should come up with a percentage, because I think if you start doing RFR 80 by right, it really is not a good deal. It's not.
I just don't want to do RFR
Jim,
by right.
let me just go.
Farms, yes, RFR, yes.
I want to go back to your point about, you mentioned the P for permitted. What about special use? Is there any avenue for that?
Well, if you put an S in there, a special use, that directs the applicant to go to the zoning board for the special use permit. So the whole ball game is with the zoning board.
I do have a question.
well, they go to the planning board too.
It would go to the planning board. So
I have a question and concern. Specifically, if large landowners usually like to subdivide their land, they might want to give it to their children or sell some more. How is this going to impact if we do this percentage? Because you're going to have people down the way, they're going to say, well, I need some extra money, I'm going to sell some of my land off, or I got 3 or 4 kids, I want to give them some land. So the original owners won't be owning that, they'll either be transferring the title to family members or selling it. How do we deal with that situation?
Well, then any approvals or rights would go to the heirs or the people getting the land. They could subdivide the property among the children, they could keep it intact.
And you still have solar on it, though, if there's a certain percentage. That's my concern.
You could.
Yeah, but percentage or acreage. If you have 100-acre property and you want to give it to your children, you're giving each child 20 acres, you've got 4 kids, that's 80 of your acres, and you just put solar on 3 of your 10 acres.
Right.
So it doesn't fly.
Isn't an easy answer anyway around.
But that's
Well,
why
let me
it
throw this
shouldn't
out
be by
for
right.
you. If you'd rather go with a percentage rather than a fixed acreage, how about if we go back to the 15%, which is the coverage that a residential property would be entitled to? So at least that way, property owners in the area wouldn't have any more coverage on an adjacent parcel or nearby parcel than what they would expect to see if the property was zoned for residential purposes. That might be, that
Would
might be
that
a good.
also discourage farming? So farming could say, you know, this is crazy, why am I busting my butt keeping this farm going when I can just become a landowner? Now I can do 15%. 15% is 15 acres on a 100-acre place, so that's 15, or 7.5 at 50. That's a lot of acreage. So I'm not for 15%. I'm just trying to find a way in here to anybody out there in the world who say they're going to be like, oh, this council really doesn't want large solar properties. You know, we don't want it anymore.
If we just stay with farms and we don't open it up to all of our R80, and we've left it at farms. The whole purpose was to do it so we could help farmers,
Right.
not so we could help them as large landowners. And they didn't put it on their house and on their barn.
So until the council has opportunities to say no, assuming that in the future they're going to, we've already had 5 come in, so this can go on and on and on. Proposals can keep coming in for zone requests, month after month, after year after year. And obviously, if the council in 6 months is saying no to everything, well, they're not going to want to waste their money. But meanwhile, look at this ordinance, and I believe that we should make it known that we're not looking for large solar farms anymore. And that's my opinion. That's my opinion.
But this doesn't address that, because that's manufacturing commercial. This is only R80. The by right R80.
We have to come.
Well, if you wanted to open up, again, I'll go back to the original ordinance, okay? Put a P, if you do want to open it up to RFR80, and you want to do something by right, put a P in there, and then put a minimum lot size down there. In other words, you could put 100 acres. If you have 100 acres of RFR80, you can do a solar project, it's permitted by right. And then you can also put either a percentage or a fixed acreage of that, how much you want to see of it. Or you could drop it down to 50, all property
And
owners
what
on
you're
50.
saying is another way to say what we were trying to say in this paragraph.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right, it's just a different way of doing it. So we need to know, does the council want to limit these solar and get in down and allow by right in the district use table, putting in a P, it's permitted? Does the council want to do that? And
Well, it's one avenue, perhaps.
Yeah, it's one avenue. I'm not sure I want to have it permitted.
no,
Then allowed, period.
At least that
even
way,
to allow a small amount,
You know,
do
by
you
doing
want to do it?
By doing it that way, it more or less somewhat binds the council. It gives certitude to the public as to what parcels are eligible to it. And it certainly gives you justification to say no to anything else that might come forward. So you're just refer them right to the ordinance. So, you know,
If you leave that out altogether and say, no more RFR 80,
that's,
period,
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's what the comprehensive plan says.
That's your opinion,
That's your
Sharon.
opinion,
What the
Sharon.
comprehensive plan says. It's not.
The
not
land use map then
Well, then,
is
That's your
really,
opinion.
no, the land use map has only 2 areas that have
Red.
red and purple. The rest of it is green, whether it's R1 or open space, that's what I'm saying.
You're absolutely right.
So you would not be able to put solar in any of that.
Yeah, that's why you go to PUDs, and that's why you make a choice differently from that.
So I guess we have to figure it out. It seemed like we were making more headway with percentages versus.
No,
No,
we're nowhere near
Oh, no,
selling this
no,
paragraph.
we were at least talking about percentages. I mean, I think I was on the high end, everyone was much
I'm
lower.
not talking about this.
I'm not of the opinion to not have it, so we have to figure out something in between, I guess.
Well, the thing is-
That certainly would accomplish it if we had it small, permitted with a certain amount. But again, I think,
Well, if you want, go back to the original sentence. If the parcel is zoned RFR 80 and the applicant is seeking to rezone the parcel, no more than, and that's where we can put something in, no more than 3 acres will be allowed on parcels above that are more than 50 acres, or 2
You have to
acres,
say how many.
Or 10%.
or 5%.
A percentage.
5%.
If you do 3 acres period, that's all they're gonna get, no matter how big their lot.
Right, that's right,
Or their,
that's
their
right,
land is.
that's right. Or you do a
We're trying to
percent,
figure that out.
and it's in
All right,
5.
Kevin's-
Just trying to help this maybe with some legal reasoning. I think part of the problem is that the existing use table and the existing zoning does not allow RFR 80 unless an amendment is sought and the changes deemed to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So it seems to me that you could put some language in here that say if an application to change a zone to allow for a solar array is made for a parcel of land that's RFR 80, and if the town council enacts an ordinance with a finding that such a change is consistent with the comprehensive plan, then for that parcel, there can never be more than X% coverage, whatever you agree on, or X acre coverage. You can do it that way, but you can't, I don't think legally you can change it and look and establish some kind of system where you're opening the door to RFR 80s in general without changing the ordinance and getting around the comprehensive plan analysis. You can't do it that way. I think you can just give, and the other thing I want to say is, because we also have to keep in mind the Teresi dump site gravel bank experience, where everybody in town agreed that that was a good idea, and that would have allowed a lot more coverage than 15%, and you don't want to prohibit that. And that's consistent with my constitutional concern, that because everybody has a legal right to apply for zoning relief, you can't say, as a matter of fact, you're going to be denied in every case. That's a preclusion of pursuing your property rights. So it is possible to craft good language that goes through that step by step, if it's an RFR 80 and if the council finds the plan project or the change to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, then in those cases you've got to limit it as follows. No more than whatever. But you know, one size does not fit all in this situation, and that's part of the struggle I think we're all working with here, is that it has to be some flexibility, and yet you cannot tie all property owners and say, if you're RFR 80, you're going to get denied. You can't do that. So I think the language can be done. It's going to be better than what I'm saying that I've been able to come up with in 15 minutes or so, but this can be done, I think, in clear and kind of satisfy pretty much all of the concerns you're talking about, where you make it...
But that would still allow anyone out there to apply.
They will change that right anyway. No matter what we do, they have that right anyway, under the Constitution.
But also, if the parcel is zoned RFR 80, the next section says, and the applicant is seeking to rezone the parcel. Well, let's say you can't rezone the parcel, so if the parcel is zoned RFR 80, cut that next part. Then if the parcel is zoned RFR 80, no more than X of the parcel shall be covered. Just take out, and the applicant is seeking a rezone, because they can't. They'd have to do that through the council anyway.
So that's the whole thing.
But if the parcel is zoned RFR 80, no more than X, whatever it is, of the parcel shall be covered. Now, whether that's 3 acres, 3%, 10%, 15%, I think we can discuss that further.
Respectfully,
But they're not rezoned.
if it's RFR 80, you can't do it.
That's right.
You cannot do it without a zone change.
That's right.
So that's why that...
Maybe we should ask the question, do we want to see a greater number of small projects scattered throughout town? Or do we want to see a small number of big projects that are well hidden? Maybe we should ask that question first.
Say that again, Jim?
You know, do we want to see a larger number of small projects scattered around town? Or would you rather see
much smaller number of big projects that are probably well situated.
Residents don't want that?
They don't want that either, okay. Then, you know, let me go back to my 15% that if you want to put a percentage in there, 15%.
5%. Make it small.
Well, 10 acres, if you had a 10-acre parcel, 15% of that is an acre and a half.
We don't want a million of these things all over.
I don't want to really do things all over either. I would rather have 2 big ones than 100 little ones. Well, I understand people don't want it, but, you know, I would rather have 2 big ones hidden than 100 out in the open.
Well, we've been there, and
But they're not.
Exactly. If they're 700 feet away, and people say, no, it's not hidden, and you say, well, it is, and that you still say no to it. So anyway, I think that we need to deal with the fact that people will seek a rezone.
Yeah, no, I
And
think,
they have a
I
right to
can't
do
stop
that.
them from doing that, but I think Kevin had a point to try and put in there where we can try and limit it as best we can, based on what we all come to a consensus on, as far as what we want. You know, we have to put something in there.
My concern is that with all these, the longer we wait, and I agreed to get the extension today and not to close the hearing, because the clock is ticking and other applications are going to come in, so we really have to make a decision, and I'm flexible. But I want to control this flow of solar going on in town. That's my concern right now. I'm sitting here concerned about us not coming up with something. I'm flexible. You think percentages, I have a concern about some percentages, because it could be more than 10 acres depending upon the size, but
I know it's 30%, but yeah, we're all, you know, I'm willing to cut it in half, you know, maybe a little further.
I'm okay with 10 or 15%.
What about 10%?
Well, I want 5, so who's for 5%? Okay, there's 2.
in our bathroom.
All right, we got 3 that want it down to 5%. Now that's gonna tell them.
I actually want 3, but I will.
Yes,
I
Kevin?
have a question, because, again, I don't want to lose sight of the Teresi situation, the gravel bank situation, where that might prohibit that kind of fix for a problematic site.
The last sentence here, though, allows the planning board reserves the right to adjust the allowable PSES coverage based upon the unique characteristics of the parcel and in a manner that is consistent with the town comprehensive plan, with the intent to balance environmental aesthetic concerns as well as the right to property owner to develop the parcel. So it allows the planning board to adjust the parcel, depending on the characteristics. If it's all sandbank, well then they'll adjust it up.
So they could adjust the 5%?
Sure.
That was-
They could, yes.
So look, Sylvia, we just got this tonight. I didn't have a chance to read it.
That's fine.
There's a lot in here, and there's some good suggestions, but I think in efforts to move it forward, you guys have 3 votes for 5%, we'll leave it at that for now, right? And we'll work on Kevin to really add some language in there like we spoke of tonight, and we'll try and work with that. All right?
So we leave that sentence.
You voted for 5%, John, right? Is that okay? If it's not, say it.
That's not.
Then,
I mean, if 5 is better than 10,
All right.
that's all I'm saying.
All right.
But I think it should be 3 acres. That's what I think.
And I think it should be 3, but.
oh, I agree, it's an easier way to go if you want to do 3 acres.
And then, like in there right now, 3.
Three.
and,
3 acres. Oh, there you go. All right, so 3 acres and 8.
3 acres.
And what size parcel? Anything above 3%?
Come on,
Oh, it
Bruce,
doesn't matter.
please.
Well, we don't want somebody who's got 3 acres to try to do 5%. That's great, you know. So is there a number? Do we want to say up to 3 acres is allowed on 50 acres or more? if they request
Why
a
don't you
zoning
just do
change.
5%? Why are we getting so complicated? Everybody agreed to 5%.
Yep, 5%
It's-
for.
It's currently 30%. I think that's reasonable.
No.
Then we'll go with 15.
Okay, so you want to go back to the original?
No,
No, I guess,
you guys have had a consensus for
we
5.
have 5%, but if everybody prefers the 3-acre thing, I'm fine with that.
I'm not with that.
I'm not of that opinion.
Are you for 3 acres?
Everybody said I did.
So there's 3,
All
for 3 acres?
All right,
We'll do that, and I'll have Kevin work on the verbiage, I guess. All right, so
All right.
moving on,
so it's gonna be 3, all right.
number 14. Number 11.
There's just a period.
On page 4?
Okay, yeah, the 14 word candles. Has to have a period.
Where are you, Sharon? I don't know.
I gotta find it, because it's just a little clear.
Oh, that's what it is. Just tell them.
Period after the word panels, but
All right, we'll be fine. That's minor, that's a minor edit.
All right, we on page 5? Top of page 5 is land clearing.
On the no blasting or power handling, is that even possible? Is that even possible?
I think that's,
Without any jackhammer, if they can't blast?
Well, they,
I'm asking, it's just a question.
no, right.
I thought that was,
That's just a comment that I heard.
yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah, the power hammering, I mean, they have, isn't that how they put it in?
Yeah,
I mean, that's, if they're gonna do it, it's gonna be noisy, and it'll be done.
So no blasting.
So I think, take out or power hammering.
Because they also have things at the end of the excavator that breaks the lock. And they're still like the power line.
I would, I wish there was something like that.
No.
And
And the
then,
second
Second
paragraph,
paragraph, in instances where,
so, see where it says,
Yeah, you gotta
there's
take
a
the
sentence,
40%
yeah,
off.
that maximum 40% is the problem. Clearing of
that's
any
different. That's different.
shall be limited to a maximum of
30 acres.
3 acres.
No, that's residential.
It's
commercial.
in instances when a parcel is rezoned, that's the first part of it.
It's rezoned from residential to commercial manufacturing. Commercial manufacturing, it gets up to 40%.
No, that's not what it says. It says in instances. Okay.
We have a parcel.
Clearing is, that has to match what we paid, that's 3 acres.
That's a different percentage. One was clear cut, and the other one was panel cover.
And this one is saying, this is the first sentence, is saying if it's rezoned. So
Right.
they're assuming that they got rezoned to commercial. So if it goes from residential to commercial, and obviously it says where a parcel is rezoned, okay? We don't want more than 40% of it used. You're not going to allow them to do 75%, in other words. If a parcel is zoned commercial, then they're going to be, oh, I'm commercial, now I can do 75%, because you're allowed in a commercial zone to, you know.
This has to do with land clearing.
It's land clearing.
I'm just,
Yeah, but the same thing.
No, it's
No,
not.
it's not.
well,
It's two different
it
percentages.
is.
Solar panel coverage and land clearing.
Yeah, you're right.
It's totally different.
Yeah, yeah, it is different.
And they can land clear anything they
So
want.
if they're only gonna do 3 acres, which is what you folks suggest, they're not gonna have, you're not gonna worry about 40%.
Yeah, then they're not
They're
going
gonna
to
clear
get
whatever they
anywhere
have to
near
clear.
40%,
They're
you're
going to
right.
clear anything they want because they want a cornfield.
Yeah, so you're right, that 40% can stay, because they're only going to be allowed to do 3 acres, I think.
Page 6, that clearing existing vegetation, any questions there? Tribal impacts, it looks like that was all square. Looks like page 7, number C, anything there?
I'd like to say, page 7, the last sentence, additionally, the planning board may require certain vegetation to use understory cover that may serve to, I'd like to add the word further screen the project. And after that, I'd like the owner and any successors will maintain this screen and understory cover.
Isn't the the maintenance of the project?
I was concerned about the and any successors. I want and any successors in there. Right now, it's just the owner. So the owner and any successors will maintain the screen and understory cover. There's a couple of places we need that.
You guys okay with that? Page 7? Page 8?
Hold on. I don't have it.
Page 8? There's another page 8. Page 9?
This is that the last paragraph, under 5, finance and security. I just want to change the word from drives, access drives to roads. I don't,
Yeah, we're going to find very more.
Exactly. Page 9, yeah.
yeah, but it's in the, you gotta go to the.
Oh, you need to go to the ordinance.
Yeah, you don't have it now.
Oh.
You gotta go to the ordinance.
Page 9.
Yeah.
Financial security.
After the sentence in 5, financial security, the last paragraph,
Okay.
the applicant shall establish and maintain and effect general liability insurance covering the land, equipment, and any access drives. That drives doesn't mean anything. I think roads would be better, that's
I
all.
thought we were going to change that.
Yeah, that's what he did.
Oh, we did? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Access roads?
access roads.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Page 10, it says abandonment. We change that from 1 year to 6 months. Page 10,
Yeah,
page 11.
I have something to add.
Okay.
Page 11, the very last sentence again. The applicant and PFAS and any successors shall reimburse the town for any cost incurred as specified in the stormwater facility maintenance agreement. After the applicant, on the last sentence, add and any successors, comma, shall reimburse the town for any cost incurred as specified in the stormwater facility maintenance agreement. What is
We got all our comments, now I'll open it up to the public. Yes, David?
Evening. Dave Husband. Not to throw a monkey wrench in this or beat the dead horse, but the section with page 4, number 13, will you, and it's going to be tough, I don't know what we're going to do about it. If you say either a percentage or a number of acres on a specific piece of property, someplace you should probably put in there that the owner of that property cannot reduce the size of that property during the existence of that solar installation. Because if they do, if you say 3% of 100 acres.
Well, they did 3
that's why we didn't do this.
That's right. If you say they've got 100 acres, so we're going to allow them 3 acres, they can't cut that acreage down. They can't sell 20 acres off to their son or their daughter, or their uncle or anybody who owns their property. Well, see, no, this is what the problem is. Because
It's illegal.
as Barbara brought this up, she said, what happens if it gets down to 3 acres on 10 acres because the rest has been sold off? And all of a sudden, now you've got a situation.
Property rights.
Yeah, I know it's property rights.
Which is why you shouldn't do it.
I'd like to hear if you could comment on this.
Yeah, it's, you can't, prevent someone from applying to subdivide their property, which is a process that's involved to sell pieces of it. So, you can't do it, it's unconstitutional.
Right.
So, if somebody does this and builds, say, a 3-acre, former RFR 80, they're allowed to build a 3-acre solar array going forward, and then the remaining, let's say, 50 acres, they want to subdivide that into 2-acre lots. There's a process they have to apply for subdivision approval through the, not through the council, but through, there's a process they have to go through, planning primarily. And if that would be part of the consideration of the planning board, depending on the language that's in here, whether that would go against the spirit, wouldn't go against the letter of the ordinance, but that would be a determination that would have to be made. But you can't say you can't subdivide it once this is done. You can't.
Is not the percentage or the number of acres directly contingent upon the size of the piece of property?
At the time they apply.
At the time they apply. So almost anybody that has 50 acres or 100 acres or whatever the limitation is you put on it, can say, I've got no problem putting this on here, the 3% or the 3 acres or whatever, or 5%, whatever the figure may be, because as soon as I do, I don't have to abide by the rule that I have 50 acres anymore and I can put my 3 acres on. See, there's a direct tie between the size of that lot.
But you can't, Dave, you can't assume that that's going to be the intent going into it, because it's still subject to all the hurdles they have to go through to get subdivision approval.
Sure.
And so they, as a property right, a fundamental property right, they have the right to sell their property or parts of their property subject to applicable zoning laws and subdivision laws and so forth. So that's the best you can do.
Yeah. It's going to happen, though, I'm sure.
Right, but that's the best.
But it's also on that, because if you have 100 acres and you put in 3 acres, and then you sell off 75 acres and you put in another 3 acres, and then you sell that off and you have 60 acres, you put in another 3 acres. I mean, the whole thing is Murphy's Law. What have you not thought of? Because someone will think of it. So now you're going to be getting 3 acres and 3 acres and 3 acres and 3 acres because they can. And oh, by the way, I have a farm. I have 20 acres. I want or 50 acres. I want another 3 acres. So I would just like to have no number on it. I'd like to have nothing. What is it? I want nothing. I don't want you to have any amount on RFR 80. Except as a farm.
That's where I was.
I know, as a farm. As a farm, you'll be getting.
We've made some progress. Anyone else wanting to talk?
Taylor hands. Part of me feels like this is not a waste of time, but if we just kind of trusted you guys to make the right decision and listen to the planning board and kind of deny the proposals that aren't to the comprehensive plan and to approve the ones that are good. That's all we need. However, having this, I did have one comment for the, there was one. It was about the notification.
Yeah, what page again?
I don't know yet, I'm trying to find it.
Page 3, number 9.
Okay. Top paragraph?
Yes, you ended the sentence in the beginning, the notification to all abutters and residents within 500 feet shall be given, period. And I think we should keep in the form of formal written notification to make it clear that how they need to notify the abutters.
Well, that's what notification is, it's a formal.
But I think you need to specify that because like she said, if you don't put that in there, then we'll figure that out.
I think that's acceptable.
Okay.
That's actually a good idea.
Yeah, just add that little bit.
Just keep that.
That's already
That makes sense.
It is, but yeah, but we took it out, so she put it back in. Thank you.
That's good. And the period is that notification.
Correct.
Yeah.
Justin?
Sorry, the
Go
first?
ahead, Justin, before you don't have a chance.
Justin Bentley from Maxon Hill Road. Just a couple things really fast. Thank you again. I know we've had
a lot of disagreements. I'm, and probably say this the wrong way, I still am against it at all on RFR 80. However, Frank, as you and I going back and forth, that you got to compromise and somewhere in the middle. So but just to say thank you, I actually enjoyed flipping through and highlighting, hey, that's what this person added at the last meeting. Hey, that's my line. So it feels good to be given the opportunity to take an active part. And just on the 3 acre versus 5%, 3%, still stuck there. As much as just a caution, I guess, just the 3 acres to whether it's 5% still can be a pretty substantial difference, or almost doubling on a major lot size. So I guess in meeting halfway, I would probably lean more towards the 3 acre with the 50 acre, I think the 50 acre minimum that Ms. Thompson had put in her original change would eliminate what Ms. Capalbo had said, hopefully the Murphy's Law, trying to subdivide, just something to consider. I guess lower end and having that minimum lot size would be a little more palatable, I think, for some people. So thank you.
Thanks, Kristen.
Here.
Yes, John? You already went. First time the speakers first.
Hi, John Pennypacker. Okay, just one quick question. There was a lot of conversation. I'm not sure where we ended up. Where did the council end up in terms of Councilor Thompson's proposal about allowing solar on RFR 85 to any resident
By right?
by right who has a large enough lot?
3 acres.
To any
They
resident.
want to do it by right, John. It's not by right now, so they opted to, these 3 people did do 3 acres.
So is this for people who choose to go through the process of rezoning their property
Yes.
to commercial special, not for people who can just stay RFR 80?
Right, right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Now we're going, first time is only, now,
Made your mistake, Franco, here.
no.
Okay.
Talked enough, Dave. I'll get to the second timers, all the first timers. Anyone else?
I guess I would just want to echo what Justin said. No, I wanted to just echo what Justin said in terms of putting the 50-acre minimum on there to help with the subdivision work.
Thanks, Carol. Anyone else? All right, anyone else that's spoken already that wants to speak?
Don't sit up here.
Sharon brought this up last week, and didn't get in. Page 4, number 14.
Wait for us to get there.
Yeah. Fourth line down. You gotta have the word "not" in there. Does not yield.
What are you talking about?
Fourth line down, number 14.
Yep.
Whoa!
Whoa!
Thank you very much. Anybody else see that? Dave, you did. Oh, good.
Well, I have to say,
Anyone else? Okay, thanks, everyone, for your input.
She's got,
Sorry.
I missed you.
One more.
People will continue thinking.
Lynn Hopkinton, Maxon Hill Road. Page 4, number 12, all precautions must be taken to protect neighboring properties from exposure to any radiation produced as a result of the PSES or related high voltage wires, including but not limited to high levels of radio frequency electromagnetic radiation. Is there any consequence or is there any monitoring that's going to be done afterwards? Or any consequence if this is violated?
Residents just show up green.
Orange, like orange or red.
Say running on the lights. Okay. We want to close or continue, folks? Close.
I would like to make one more comment. I still would like to, on page 413, I would still like to address if the parcel is zoned RFR 80, that I don't think we should allow other than farmers on RFR 80 to cover the land with solar panels. I mean, to do their 3 acres or away. I think that people who buy RFR 80, you wanted a big piece of property, you wanted your house there, your barn, or whatever you wanted, I don't think you should have solar panels. I don't care if you need the money, you're not a farm. You shouldn't have bought the big property. But if you have a big property, I don't think you should put solar on it, except on your house or on your barn, because it will become a town of all kinds of little solar things everywhere. Instead of 1 or 2 big ones hidden, it's going to be 100 all over the place, because we are exclusively, almost, RFR 80. It gives every single person you know and meet that has 20 acres, 10 acres or above, 1 to 3 acres. I just think it shouldn't be allowed. If you want a true solar array, then you should come to the council and say, I want to do 15 acres or 20 acres. Okay, then we can address it as a unit. But if you put it on RFR 80, that is all of your residences and all of your friends that have 10 acres or above can put it on their property by right.
No, it's not. No, none of that. No. It's, as was mentioned, it's for 50. If the parcel is zoned RFR 80 and the applicant is seeking to rezone the parcel, it's not everybody can do it. It's if somebody comes in and says, I want to rezone it, no more than three acres of the park. Oh, I'm sorry, no more than a certain percent. What did we just? Yeah, 3 acres. Excuse me, 3 acres. I can't read that sentence the way it is, but no more than 3 acres. So of the parcel shall be covered. So
But we have a lot of 50-acre parcels.
okay. Well, you heard the residents.
Sure, y'all want it.
No, they don't. No, they
I
don't.
think it's a reasonable, Barbara, it's a reasonable compromise.
I know,
We've
but
gotten to this point.
I understand that you
Well, we got 3 people, so away we go.
I understand you got to this point, but
Can
I
I
think there's going to be Murphy's Law.
All right, well, let's find out.
Am I correct that this would only apply first if an RFR 80 parcel is rezoned for solar? So it doesn't create any by rights whatsoever for RFR 80 zone. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Sure. And they can go and rezone. They can come to planning board and say, I want to rezone.
They can try me.
We've got to a point where we've got a decent compromise. All right,
They're going to rezone the parcels.
thank you all. All right, so Sylvia, you made a motion to try and close it?
I'll move that we close the hearing and set a date.
Second.
Decision.
Motion made and seconded.
So, do we want to do it, well, sooner the better, actually.
No, I'd like to see
Well, hold
this.
on.
I'd like
We
to
have
see
discussion.
this.
Motion made and
Yeah.
seconded, so.
I'd really like to see this written out. We've again made changes, because 14, number 13 is huge. I'd really like to see it written. I would like not to close the hearing and see the whole thing written correctly, not just in 2 different pages, so we have to keep going back and forth, but an entire ordinance so we can read the whole thing as it stands, put these 2 pieces of paper together, and then deal with it. I'd like to have one more public hearing, so we look at the whole thing as a unit.
Mr. President, can I respond to that? The fact of the matter is that at the last council meeting, I actually seconded Councilor Thompson's, and I ended up voting against the motion I seconded because I wanted to be flexible. But the fact of the matter is, time is of the essence, and we've got to do something. We can always modify it, and we have, I believe there was 5 new applications I saw come in.
Yes, sir.
So the bottom line is people have to, I'm not going to draw people a picture. I want this stopped, we can always revisit it, let's move. And I'm for moving because we got 5 applications and you're just leaving the window open. I don't want any more birds to fly in.
And you can still say no.
Yes, sure.
Can I ask if
That's a fair statement.
if Jim, in order for us to take a vote, Jim has to present
Yes.
the combined thing anyway.
Yes.
So I don't know why we need an.
So we will.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
We can close the hearing.
And when we have our, and when,
We have
and we have our time for a decision, we will have discussion on what Jim has presented. And if anybody says, oh, we made a mistake, that's when you can fix it before you make a decision. But we can close the hearing. And
Once you
still
close it-
have discussion at the next,
Amongst the
that
council
meeting.
only.
Amongst the council,
Only.
right. Yep. Yep.
The only reason I would like to continue it is because I just got Sylvia's document today that had some information that I didn't know about until today. But I understand the urgency of trying to figure something out. But that would be my only reason, is to see it in print and to digest Sylvia's comments, because I didn't have a chance to read it. You know? I don't like reading on the fly when I've got something to support.
My concern about digesting it, we have 5 applications. The next meeting, we could have,
No, I understand that, Scott. Right. But I just got Sylvia's document tonight. Yes, Jim?
Just one clarification. We're going to put the 3 acres in there. Did you want to have a minimum parcel size of 50 acres to go along with that? or
Oh,
is it
yes.
just-
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
Well, I'm not sure. Okay, hold on.
I've got Sylvia on that.
Okay.
Okay, can I ask a question?
1 second, Carol.
Once, you can still say no to the 5 that are in front of
Yes.
you. You can still say no. So it isn't like you have to be in such a hurry. You can still say no. Just look at it in full.
Okay, well, and there's more
Digest it
Yeah,
in
there's a
full.
motion to close. Scott seconded it. So, we'll make a vote on the motion to close. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so it'll be continued till when, Lisa?
Can we do it on the 28th? 28th? I am overwhelmed
Yes.
with the applications. You tell us, you tell us, coming in. You've got a town council meeting on the 14th, the 22nd, and the 28th. All of them are at the Charter Middle School auditorium. I don't know if it's too quick to put it together for the 14th or not.
Try for February.
No, Jim, can we have it so we can make a decision on the 14th?
Oh, yeah, it's easy.
There we go, okay?
So do you want to include it in how, so you, I haven't filed that agenda yet, for the week that maybe perhaps something else would be added to it. So did you want to start at 6:30?
Sure.
The 14th?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot going on behind the scenes that people just don't realize. And the staff and the number of departments are overwhelmed with this. Because you can't just say, no, you gotta advertise, you gotta hear them, you know, you gotta go through all that baloney to get to someday if you wanna say no. So, you know.
So your special meeting on the 14th is because there's a solar application before you for the Main Street.
Yeah, Main Street.
That stuff. So
We'll do it at 6:30.
And everybody read that thing ahead of time.
All right, thanks. Next up, consent agenda, approve town council meeting minutes of December 17, 2018. Accept the October 29, 2018 transcript as the record of the hearing filed by Southern Sky Renewable Energy LLC, LR6A owner, LLC and Realty Financial Partners Limited Partnership. Accept the December 3rd, 2018 transcript as a record of the hearing filed by Southern Sky Renewable Energy LLC, LR6A owner, LLC and Realty Financial Partners Limited Partnership. Set February 19th, 2019 as the second town council meeting in February due to the President's holiday. Approve abatements resulting from adjustments on motor vehicles, tangibles, and real property submitted by the tax assessor. Approve refunds resulting from overpayments to the 2018 real property taxes submitted by the tax assessor.
Please poll December 17th.
Yes.
December 3rd.
so 17 is
I make a motion to approve consent agenda acceptance of the town council meeting minutes of December 17th and the December 3rd, 2018 transcript provided by Southern Sky.
Motion made and second, all those in favor? Aye. Okay.
All right, that's page 12 on the minutes.
Which one, which minutes?
on the 17th, December
Page
17th.
12.
Page 12. All right, how do we do this?
Yes.
Oh,
Hey, guys.
it would be-
We can't hear each other up here.
I can't hear.
Do you need us to back up, Lisa?
This was 1217, page 12.
Which page? I mean, which,
Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 lines up from the bottom. And it says 5 acres. Counselor Thompson stated that when they made the change to the farm viability ordinance, they did so by determining how much acre a farmer had. If they had 15 acres, it could be 1 acre. So it was
Not 5.
15, not 5. That was my only suggestion.
Someone else have something?
Yeah.
Yeah, Scott.
The only thing is that when
What page?
What page?
I gotta find it,
Okay,
Anyone else have
You want
any
Barbara
questions
to-
on December 17th?
Barbara, do you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
She's looking at this right beside me. Yes, page 2.
Yes.
And under so voted at the very beginning, Councilor Thompson wished to add into the minutes after Justin Bentley's statement in the middle of the page. Can we say what page it is? That she has stated the town residents were not burdens? I thought that was appropriate, Sylvia, but I'd like to know what the page was, because we don't know what middle of what page she's talking about.
Sure. We have to look.
Yeah,
Add that.
yeah, the thing that, I just had, when I made.
Are you talking about 1217 minutes, Scott? December
Yeah.
7th, okay. What page?
I'm trying to find it on, but the thing that I wanted was that, remember when I said about, it says in there just city council, I meant city and town council, I don't know if that was in my motion or not.
As it pertains to the letter,
Yeah, the
Yeah.
letter, right.
so that would be under old
19.
business.
Was it 19? No.
So that had to do with the Rhode Island League of City and Towns for the funding of the
Yeah,
education.
it
Yes.
says like city
Started
council.
on
like-
page 5.
Okay, I made a note, page 5, city and town council. Did I make a mistake and only say city council when I spoke?
Where are you talking about?
It's not written, and then you add it.
We just added in.
Just added in.
Yeah, city and town council, right? Last
Yeah.
line?
City and town council,
Sure.
last line. Did I say that when I made the
I
motion?
don't
I
know.
have no idea, but just add.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, if you want it in, why not?
That's what you meant, and that's your intention,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else on 1217 minutes?
No.
Okay, now 12:03, somebody had something on 12:03?
December 3rd, 2018 transcript? Yes.
What page, Bob?
No, all the pages, it's absolutely all the pages that Capalvo is on. She spelled it C-A-P-A-L-D as in David O, instead of B as in Barbara. So the name is wrong all the way around, yeah, all the way.
Okay.
Lisa will not accept that.
No, no.
Took us long enough to get it, didn't
Yeah. So
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the town council meeting minutes of December 17th and to accept the December 3rd, 2018 transcript as the record of the hearing filed by Sutton Star and the letters.
Second.
And you can second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Okay. Public forum,
Hey, Ray.
Mr. Cox.
Oh, you don't want to hear me now. I wants to go home. Ray Cox, Hopkinton City. Have two issues. One is the shoulders on the roads in Hopkinton and actually the state. I was kind of hoping the senators would have been here to put a bill in. I'd like to see at least 3 feet on either side. You're doing highways over on the white lines. There's too many bicycles in the middle of the roads, the fences, you can't walk, they can't do anything. It's terrible, and there's more and more bicycles today than there ever has been. Groups, especially on weekends, all in the roads. And I know we got some one year, I just did the road back here on, by the police station, and there's no shoulder at all. And I would like to see the state and the town also put shoulders on these roads, at least 3 feet behind that white line. We need it back, the way I look at it. It's very dangerous. And the other thing is, now, like I said, where are they gonna get the money to do this? We don't have to buy the property because they're already over there. And the other second issue is signs. You come into Rhode Island, they say, welcome to beautiful Rhode Island, a big sign. Well, I would take that thing right down because there's nothing beautiful about seeing distracting signs. There's so many signs right now, it's terrible. I mean, we're all talking about all this solar going in. We're also littering with too many signs. I think 90% of them could be taken down. We're spending a lot of money, and every time you turn around, there's another sign put up. And for instance, exit 2. We got 2 stop signs, 2 signs before it telling you there's a stop sign. That's a lot of money wasted in my book. You need 1 sign. If you're doing speed limit and you don't see that 1 sign, you shouldn't have a license. I'm serious. And you're doing the speed limit.
Talking about
You should
common
see that.
sense things, Ray.
But it's just, it's ugly. And then they got sticks all down in the middle of it, and then there's no shoulder there. What are they doing? They're spending millions of dollars on these projects. And to me, it's ugly. I'm serious. I know how they feel about all this glass going all over the place. Well, I feel that way about the signs. And I'd like to see some bills put in to do it. Like I said, I was hoping the senators were here.
Well, you can contact them, you know, Ray. They have phone numbers.
What's
I'll
that?
give it to you. They have phone numbers, you can contact them.
Yeah,
Call them up.
I will.
Call Lane and
I'll
Justin
call
and Brian.
Kennedy and, yeah. What's this way I'm looking, I wanted to bring it up to the country, you gotta start somewhere. I mean, it's really getting bad in this state. They say, discover beautiful Rhode Island. And that's the biggest sign there, I mean, I cut that thing right now. I mean, you don't see it, you don't see no beauty.
Yeah.
And where you have a stop sign, more than likely, especially on the highways, they already got LED lighting. And if you can't see, I mean, you take a test for your license. You shouldn't have a license if you don't see that 1 sign. That's the way I honestly look at it. So I'd like to see it cut back in some of that, and I'd like to see shoulders.
I think it
On all the roads.
should be a good idea. Yeah.
Well, I've talked to a lot of people, everybody
I
I've
have
talked
2,
to,
I'll give you
Tom,
that.
agree with me.
I have 2, I'll give you them.
Thanks. Okay?
Thanks, Frank.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Good to see you.
Happy New Year, buddy.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Next on my report, I attended the State House inauguration of the governor and all the elected officials. It was a nice event, a little windy, but fun nonetheless. Town manager report, Bill McGarry.
Thank you. December of last year, I conducted numerous employee interviews for the vacant positions of animal control officer and building and zoning official. And as I said on the email, we pleased to announce the hiring of David Rodeo Cranston as our new building and zoning official. He starts on Monday, January 14th. He's a certified building official by the Grand Island Code Commission there in Hopkinton, so we're glad to have him on board. And lastly, on January 3rd, I conducted the town's annual multi-year goals staff meeting with department heads at the police department's conference room, and we were successful in developing the FY 2020 annual goals and the fiscal year of 2021 to 23 multi-year goals for council review and possible adoption during the second meeting in June.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah,
The appointment, the building, is that full-time or part-time?
It's a full-time position.
it's replacing Brad Wood.
Yes.
He's been going a while. Anyway, thanks, Bill. New business.
Oh, before we
Yeah.
leave this agenda, the manager report had annual and multi-year goals down. And I would just like to, given the time, I won't read them, but there's a memo we got from the manager. We usually do it at this time of the year, and he lets us know what townwide accomplishments have been done. What are these annual and multi-year goals? How many of them have been met? And every year he lists how many have been met, and he had a list of 20. different items that were, that the town in general, it was his office, council, what did we get done? And there were 20 items listed, and I will not read them right now. But very good job, all around, thank you.
Thank you very much.
First item on the new business, number one, discuss and consider setting a hearing date for a zoning ordinance amendment filed by Joyce Lucy, trustee, Joyce K. Lucy Living Trust, 145 Seconic Boulevard, Narragansett, Rhode Island, for property located at 165A Town Fog Road, identified as Plat 5, Lot 6, a manufacturing zone, to rezone from manufacturing to R1. Lisa.
I wanted to report that since the initial filing that came in on December 19th, on Friday, January 4th, there was to accompany the zoning ordinance amendment, but it's also the future land comprehensive.
That is true.
That's
There was
still
a-
accompanying, right?
Yes, it was a planning board hearing, and they mentioned that I also need to file the comprehensive plan change amendment as well, which I completely.
And that's the one that, you know, came in.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, this is an odd one, because we're taking manufacturing and putting it back to R1. The only thing which I ask is, I'm asking for some waivers, some checklist items as a result of that. I don't think we need a soil or stormwater control plan.
Well, this is just to
Just to
set
set
a
the
hearing
hearing.
date, not to get into the proposal. We're supposed to just set a hearing date.
No, I understand that,
So we
but
don't, we're not, the agenda does not allow us to get into what it's all about, other than what we read, and then we set a date, and then we find out all about it at that hearing.
okay, but my application is supposed to comply with a particular checklist, and it doesn't. So what typically happens before the zoning board is you have a pre-application hearing, and I'm kind of treating it like that, and just to seek waivers from these requirements in the application. I don't know if I can do
When
it
the
here.
item just talks about discussing instead of setting a hearing date, you know, just let me ask Kevin.
Well, I think as long as you don't make a decision, I think you can discuss it, consider it. I think it's fine to put it out on the table and let the council think about it. You just can't make a motion.
Okay. Mr. Pagasi.
Yeah, just looking for waivers of the requirements to introduce a soil erosion and stormwater control plan. Same thing would be for a letter from a biologist, and I put the reasons in an addendum to the application anyway. We don't need to go through those here. A traffic study, and also provide evidence that the water supply is sufficient. Those are just my.
What was the last one, Kelly?
That the proposed evidence that the water supply is sufficient to support the proposed activity.
That you want to waive
Manufacturing?
it? You want to waive it?
I want to waive having to introduce that
Well,
type of
that's not,
evidence.
a lot of things aren't okay. You're not gonna get, me, I don't even like R1, so we got some real problems. I got some real
Well,
problems.
let's not
with
get into it
R1.
right now.
R1, yeah. It should go to something else, but not R1, teeny weeny lots.
Let's not get into too much detail, folks. Okay, so we've got your 4 items.
Thank you. Doesn't mean we agree to waive them, though.
I understand.
Okay.
All right.
Can you repeat? It was soil erosion?
Biologist letter, traffic study, and
Traffic.
water, traffic study.
Biologist letter.
Biologist letter.
That's all right.
Okay, so Lisa, what do you think?
You have 2 council meetings in February at this point.
Yeah.
Both of them at this point are at Town Hall.
Okay.
So that would be on February 4th and February 19th.
February 4th.
February 4th? Yeah.
Is that all right, Kelly?
Sure.
All right, we'll do February 4th.
Great, thank you.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thanks for, and thank you for doing the other one.
Thank me for this one. I'm sure I won't be coming in with some popular ones in the future. You never know.
Yeah, see, once in a while you should get your thanks.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Kelly. Number 2, discuss and consider to vote 3 resolutions and authorize the Hopkinton Police Chief to enter into 3 non-reciprocal, non-emergency aid agreements between the towns of Hopkinton, Richmond, Hopkinton, Charlestown, and Hopkinton, Westlake. Chief Palmer.
And this is a routine action. This is routine.
Correct.
But I would want to correct something on there. It says 3 non-reciprocal, it's 3 reciprocal.
We could also non-emergency, that should be stricken too.
No, it is a non-emergency as well.
I do have one question to the chief.
Well, let's, Chief, you want to just give a recap as to what we're trying to do here and what you're...
This has been in existence all the time I've been here, and many years before that, probably going back to probably early 2000, between Westerly, Hopkinton, Charleston, and Richmond. And the design is this, is for emergency situations, there's already state law, we can go in there and assist, but where we've had problems in the past, prosecuting some of the cases is when you are traveling through one of the towns to get to another part of your town or going to court, you run into an accident, an arrest, a motor vehicle violation, things such as that. And it gives us a little bit of leeway with the courts to be able to prosecute these cases. And so it's an agreement we make between the chiefs so that we can continue prosecuting properly.
Okay. Any questions, Scott?
Yeah, the only question I have, Chief, is I know the town of Exeter, which borders on us, the northern part of town, is the only municipality that doesn't have a police department. They have the state police there. I'm just curious, to what extent does Hopkinton at all do any mutual aid in Exeter or go over the line?
Well, it would be through the state police, obviously, and they don't need a mutual agreement because they go, throughout the state, and so that there's not an agreement. What we do is we do give the actual mutual agreement to the colonel of the state police, so they know that this does exist, and we'll help them at any given time as well.
Yeah, it just entered my mind because I know we border on Exeter.
Right.
Move that we adopt the 3 resolutions and authorize the Hopkinton Police Chief to enter into 3 reciprocal emergency aid agreement between the towns of Hopkinton, Richmond, Hopkinton, Charlestown, and Hopkinton, Westerly. Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. I know you mentioned,
Reciprocal,
you said-
non-emergency.
it's supposed to be non-emergency.
Reciprocal and
No, is
non-emergency.
it
Yeah, wait.
non-emergency was okay?
Excuse me, yeah, right.
Yeah, non-emergency is okay.
Non-emergency
but reciprocal-
aid.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion made second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Glad you do it.
Next up, boards and commissions, discuss and consider to vote to reappoint John Pennypacker to the Conservation Commission.
So moved.
Second, with
Motion.
joy.
Motion made and second. All those
Oh,
in
you're still
favor?
here.
Still here.
Of course you're still here.
Motion made and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, John. Okay, motion to adjourn?
Oh,
Mr.
public forum.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Where did
Public
public
forum.
go?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn the meeting in memory of Bernard Eaton, who is the father of State Senator Elaine Morgan.
Just restate his name.
Bernard Eaton, E-A-T-O-N, Elaine's father. Died just before Christmas, and the funeral was after Christmas.
Second.
Okay, motion made second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.